the Grey Hat Beard podcast. Hello and welcome to show 22 of Grey Hat Beard, the modern workplace podcast where we talk about all things Microsoft 365 in the modern workplace space. My name's Kevin McDonald. I'm the Grey of Grey Hat Beard. I'm a solutions architect at CPS.
My name is Alan Nerdley. I'm an Office MVP, solution architect at CPS and Hat of Grey Hat Beard.
My name is Gary Trinder. I'm also a solutions architect at CPS. I'm also an Office Development MVP and member of the PMP team.
And I am Paul Bullock. Jumping in there, not a member of CPS. I'm a SharePoint architect with Kappa Creative, a company that I own, so I'm a contractor. I'm an Office Dev MVP and a member of PMP.
And you're a very nice looking. I don't want to get too much into a trend on these shows of talking about people's hoodies, but you've got a very nice PMP Core hoodie there. So I have, yes. Yeah. A shameless little plug for the Parker Place shop. It's a charity, so you buy one of these hoodies, and the part of the profits go to a charity for coding for kids.
See there, you've got a classic. That's a classic cup, you see. Absolutely. I've got the more modern one with the new name. Mine's
retro, I think is the answer.
It's Microsoft, it's classic. Come on.
So we've got Paul because we're going to be talking about this week's topic in the second half of the show. We're going to be talking about the joy of migration. Now, some of you may be thinking, are you kidding me? Hopefully, we'll be able to persuade you that there are some joys in migration, mostly when you're finished, but we'll be covering that and also some of the great tools that Paul's been working on that can help with that, especially in the classic to modern space. So we'll cover that in the second part of the show, because in part one, we're going to talk about the news. And I'll be honest, this afternoon, I was half sitting there thinking, what are we going to talk about? Because there hasn't been that much happening that we can talk about. Then Mary Jo Foley popped up. I get an alert because she always brings the nice news that comes up, and we have a new name for Project Oakdale. I think Al, you noticed this around the same time as well. Do you want to introduce us to the new name?
It's not just Project Oakdale. No, we now have, wait for it, Dataverse, Microsoft Dataverse. So yeah, I don't know when Spiderman's going to come along. I just can't get that out of my head. But yes, Common Data Service is now Microsoft Dataverse, and then you have Dataverse for Teams, which is what Project Oakdale now is. So yes, it's just
Spiderman. Going on that Spiderman view, does that mean that we're going to have Power Ham to go with Spider Ham? Am I the only one who's seen Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse?
I haven't seen it, no.
Well, very I think worth watching. Great film, but yeah, there is Spider Ham in that. I think Power Ham is definitely the future.
Yeah, there's been a few amusing tweets going on. So yeah, is there going to be a listaverse as well, and maybe an intranetaverse? Yeah. You know, you could have a whole
Some
song
of us are intranetaverse, definitely.
Yeah, a whole song worth of verses to describe Microsoft.
It's like a new plane of existence, isn't it? You've got the universe, the multiverse, the dataverse.
Absolutely. And I know where we're all going to end up. We're all going to end up in the dataverse.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess this is something I think several of us just went, right, okay, so what are they going to conflict with now? You know, it's like Dataflex, and I'm assuming that I'm
assuming Microsoft have checked that, and there definitely isn't anything called Dataverse out there. Oh, I've missed a link on there, and I'm sure if you go dataverse.org, there isn't something at dataverse.org. I see what they've done. They've gone for an open source project because they haven't got enough money to sue them back. That's the answer.
Oh, that's speculation at its best, isn't it?
I love it.
Not true.
Put the spoon away and stop stirring.
But no, it's interesting. I found it a little bit of a shame they didn't actually announce anything new, particularly with it. There was the names and things on there, but it's all the functionality they announced at Ignite and have announced since then.
I think it's always been an interesting thing with the terminology that they've used with it, and certainly the sort of the mix that you get with Common Data Service talking about entities and views versus tables and views and columns and fields, and there are so many different words all over the place, and I think when it comes to a lot of this stuff, when they went Dataflex and then they rolled back and they said Oakdale, and it's kind of like, okay, well, now you got Power Apps for Teams as well. Part of what they actually need to be thinking about is, how the hell do we use Bing to find the right resources to understand how to build stuff? And I think that's got to be key at the front of their mind. Is there's some of the conversations around table versus entity. I mean, I come from a SQL background. A table is just a table, and then you put views. Views are separate, but an entity seems to cause more confusion. So they're saying, well, low code, no code, maybe table is an easier concept to understand, which has riled an awful lot of people. I mean, there is so many great comments about, dumbing it down, but making it simpler to understand, I think, is a good thing. It makes sense for it to be consistent, but I do think it's going to cause challenges when you kind of go, well, actually, you do still have, I need to think about this very carefully, Dataverse tables that have views as a component part of them. That's going to be confusing, but we'll see how it pans out.
I think the biggest problem is, I think you're right about keeping it simple for most people, but by keep swapping things around, people are just getting baffled by it. And they also don't necessarily announce why they've changed things. Unless I've missed something, happy to say I haven't seen anything that says why they're trying to call it table instead of entity. When they announce these changes and back it up with a good reason for it, you kind of go with it. I mean, not being able to call it Dataflex, fine. And I think that the initial Dataflex name, everyone was good with, because it was that Dataflex Pro versus the one in Teams. There was a new bit of functionality. It changed what it did. It made sense. Dataverse, whether or not you like the name, I think Oakdale was never going to be a great name for it. It definitely needed a name, and that worked. Tables and entities, I just don't really see any reason to change that. I think it has just confused things and undervalued them. We should be looking to educate people and bring them along about what is it, why is it not just a table? What is the extra things you get with it? It is that important thing that actually is something else. So maybe they'll rename it as a table entity. That will keep everyone happy.
You're going to end up searching for CDS entities still, then Dataverse, and it's just like, it's same with Power Automate as well, and changing the name from Flow. You look for things, you still put Flow, because all the blog posts have been done with that old name, and it kind of hangs on because of that, right? So that
but Power Automate is an umbrella term, isn't it? It includes flow, it includes UI flows, it includes business process flows, whereas I think that the table one, I mean, watching the SQL crowd respond to that and go, oh, it's the same as a table, and then the Dynamics crowd are going, no.
The one thing about this though is like, okay, you're changing the name. The whole impact that has. I mean, we went through a renaming. We renamed Office 365 CLI to CLI for Microsoft 365.
I was about to say, Gary, these people who change their names, it's ridiculous. It's a right pain in the backside.
Well, that's okay, because
you get to be retro.
Well, Office 365, Microsoft 365, it's a transition. That's what we're all moving to. But by doing that, you look at it and go, okay, it's just a name, right? No, it affects everything. And afterwards, you're still looking at things thinking, I need to update all these different places. And it is a lot of work. But it depends whether Microsoft actually do that. They might just go, but new name's there. We'll change these odd little bits, and that's it. So as far as we're going to go. But
how long did Groove stick around?
Oh yeah.
Depends if you look in Task Manager or not. No, I have to say I'm not one to. I don't mind the name changes so much, but I do agree there's a lot of work that gets involved, so there's got to be a good reason. For me, I felt Power Automate was a good reason for it. Tables and entities, no. But talking on the kind of related subject, Al, you saw a good link from Jeff Teeper connected with this.
Yeah, it came out, I mean, literally a few hours ago. Really good article from Jeff. I just loved it. Took me a while just to get past that first photo.
Wow.
It starts off with a picture of Jeff Jeff and Satya, both as part of a broadcast that they did in 1993 about customizing Office with Visual Basic for applications. But it's interesting. It has a couple of key things in there. One of them was, they say that they were thinking about Excel as a framework, as a platform. You know, and you kind of think, whoa,
banks
okay,
have been doing that for ages.
That explains so much, yeah. But on the other hand, you know, the sort of the view that they had back then, and how it's kind of progressed now, it's an obvious evolution, and the technology has obviously completely changed. But one of the key things that, you know, Jeff says in that article is, you know, the vision of where you've got SharePoint and you've got Dataverse as the storage, and then you've got the Power Apps as the sort of the low code, no code development tool to build quick applications, and then you've got Teams as the front end. And I think, you know, it's just kind of solidifying, I guess, what we've all, you know, seen coming, that, you know, Teams is going to be the front end for pretty much everything. You know, it is a platform. It's turning into a product that is, you know, the front end for a platform, and therefore, you know, when we look at all of the apps that are available, all the integrations, it is the single lens into all of those capabilities, and it's obviously that's going to be the direction of travel for a long time.
But also, it has that low code to pro code. I know Donna Sarkar's been talking about that for a while, but it's supporting that within Teams as well. And I think that's an important part to it.
Yeah, I mean, you've got so much flexibility in how you surface information and data, depending on what level of maturity you have, what level of capability for low code, no code, dev capability. You know, you've got options for every single level, every single size of organization, to actually present all of that information through one interface.
It's looking nice. And I think there was other news. There wasn't new news per se today, but they also announced the Teams apps for meetings have gone GA. So they're now available. I think if I look at the other link, there's some nice examples of those. So you can embed an app within Teams that appears during your meeting. For those looking at the video, as an example of Asana, third-party product, where you can track your tasks, your inbox. I mean, why you wouldn't use Planner, I don't know, but don't tell Microsoft that. But you can embed that. You've got all your bots and pieces there, but also within your meeting itself. There we go. It's showing on there on the screen. You can see it, that during that meeting, that side panel appears and you can start doing actions without flicking between windows. It's exactly what you're saying, Alex, that single hub, that single interface to get things done.
Yeah. I think the key thing about this is it's live meeting apps, isn't it? It's apps to actually interact with during a meeting.
Yeah, not a live meeting, but during a meeting.
During a meeting, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. Would that support Teams live meetings as well? I assume
live events. No.
Live events, yeah.
No.
It's a different style of meeting, though, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's more
that's
broadcast than anything else. But I do like that these elements are popping up where it's just streamlining things rather than having to leave the Teams interface to do another thing. It's just you know, I think a lot of things that I'm starting to see. You know, we've been looking at the Yammer app recently, how that you can put Yammer into Teams and it keeps you in Teams, and it does it well, and it keeps your notifications in Teams as well from Yammer, and it's nice to have that. I think we've just got used to, oh, we've got another system there. We can view it, but that's about it. Now it's the integrations are becoming much richer. I think,
and not just Microsoft.
Yeah, I
as
think
well, which is great.
The Forms one is a good starting point for doing surveys within your meetings as well through that mechanism. So it's really nice to see these come out. You know, obviously from a dev point of view, Teams becomes more of a dev platform as well for these types of integrations, which is nice.
Yeah, so that was really good. So I think there's about 30 apps announced today, all from third parties. I haven't used any of them. I will be entirely honest with you all, but some of them look like, I was getting slightly distracted there looking at Lucid Agreements that allows you to create tasks and transcribe meeting minutes using AI. I quite like the idea of that. So be interesting to see how many of those works.
Absolutely. That's I think some of these will be very, very useful for organisations.
Yeah, absolutely. Be interested. I've been interested in that in a while, because they didn't used to be an endpoint where you could effectively stream or get to the recordings of meetings to be able to do anything with it. So I'm assuming from that's now available. Might have to go back and see if some of the cognitive services plug into that nicely.
I don't think there's an API.
There's not an API. I think this is going to be part of the new stream APIs there's new stream.
Sorry, when I say stream, I mean as in get access to the video stream during a meeting itself via the API, not stream with a capital S, stream with a lowercase s. Good point. I see where you're going.
Oh, you see the language there,
Because I mean, you could, in theory, running some of the Azure cognitive services, you could have that live video going up to Azure and getting sentiment analytics as you're going along and seeing if we're making sense. We could have a little thing during the meeting, say, Kev, shut up, move on.
Let's not do that.
Grumpy scale.
There would be too much. No, you're not making sense. Be quiet now.
Like a temperature gauge at the side.
Yeah. Waffle
meter.
There we go.
Oh, see, there you go. Copyright that right now.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so
we'll pause for a minute and went,
that's the app.
Yeah. That'd be another one for all the spare time we've all got. Sorry, what was that, Paul?
£1 million idea, just
just given away. Damn. Talking of £1 million ideas, this isn't one of them, but a very interesting article. Look at that, seamless. Great one by Stephanie Beer of Microsoft on the tech community about the life cycle of an item in SharePoint and where does it go. And really, this is looking at some of the retention and policy. So looking at retention labels, what happens with them, when do they fire, triggering dispositions at the end of a retention period. And what I really like about this article, I think, Al, you've had a good read of this, but it just seems a nice, simple way of summarizing all that in one place.
I didn't think this is the sort of thing that brings together multiple concepts but explains them really clearly and easily in terms of the questions that you get. I've got a retention policy. Well, what happens if I delete the item? Does it get retained afterwards? How does the recycle bin kick in? How long is that item going to be there? Where can I find it to recover it? What happens if I've got retention holds? And all of these kind of different factors, most of the time, if you're working in this space, you kind of go, I might need to just test that just to clarify exactly how all these different factors play together. And this article looks like it clarifies a lot of those. Obviously, when we were talking before this, I think it was Paul, you mentioned, what about expiration policies on Microsoft Groups and Teams? Yeah, that's not covered yet, but I think it gives us the scope for how it can be extended. And it's always difficult when you kind of speak to the people who are concerned about this without talking about the jargon and the technology to explain actually what happens to a document. When does it get disposed of? When does it get deleted? This is a really nice way to do that without necessarily talking about the jargon of the technology itself.
Yeah. But it's also when you explain to someone 10 minutes later they've forgotten it. Now is a nice place you can say, here's what it is. By the way, 5 minutes later when you've forgotten it, it's got shorter intentionally. Send them this link as well that they can go back and refer to that on a regular basis. I think it's a really nice, really good article.
Yeah, no, and they've put some thought into making it simple, which is really good.
Yeah, which is not an easy skill. Makes it look easy, but it's not easy to do.
It's not an easy skill.
So yeah, I thought that was very nice. Gary, one that I noticed that you picked up on but sits nicely in the dev space, and I'm hoping, talking of making it easy, you'll be able to explain this to our non-dev audience a little better, is announcing the general availability of Microsoft Teams resource-specific consent and read channel messages.
Yeah, it's a great title, that, isn't it?
It just flows off the tongue.
Yeah. So resource-specific content is essentially empowering team owners. Really, that's what it's about. So apps in the cloud, I think everyone is kind of used to consenting to permissions to be used with all sorts of different services.
Just for people who want, this is when it pops up and says, do you allow people to access your user profile on your picture, which you'd see in things like Twitter and others, but you see quite a lot within Microsoft 365 within the apps.
Yeah, so like what you're saying with Twitter, it might say, your email address and those kind of things, like basic personal information. Whereas in Teams, it's, actually saying, I want to be able to work on your behalf to read conversations or to update settings, create channels, all those kind of things. And previously that could only be done if it was approved by your administrator. So, if you wanted to accept apps that had these levels of permissions without an admin, you would be able to use it. Now, because you've got resource specific consent, you when you're accepting to a particular permission, it's just on the team that you're in. So we've had this previously in SharePoint where we could go to the site level. We never had it in Teams. It was kind of like you have one permission, you can use it across all teams. This is another level down. So there's a whole host of new permissions that app builders can use to give the owners more functionality with their apps, and I guess this opens up then, from Teams as a platform for ISVs. This makes it much easier for apps to be built and then be used by team owners. The last bit about reading messages is that previously that used to be you had to set up encryption and things to read messages. So it appears that because you're just in the team level, you can see everything anyway, and the app can then work on your behalf. So I think that's the change in that element. But it's good. I think resource specific consent is something that we're seeing now, but this will expand going forwards because it like I say, it's going to reduce that friction. It might be that admins need to be a bit more aware of that this is actually happening as well.
And so do admins have to enable this?
I don't believe so.
Enabled by default, because I'm looking at Alan, thinking of a couple of clients of ours where this could be quite interesting.
I think this opens up an awful lot of different opportunities. I mean, when you think about what we had in the SharePoint app model, to be able to say, well, I'm going to publish an app, but then I'm going to publish it down to different sites or site collections. Now, there's a retro term, isn't it? Sorry, classic term.
You mean a web?
But I think this is the sort of thing where, if you can publish one of these new apps, so you look at the meeting apps that we were talking about earlier, if you can publish that into the tenant, but then say, well, I'm going to allow it in this team, but I'm not going to allow it in this team, then I think that's the sort of thing where you'll get a lot of flexibility with this level of control. But you're right, admins will need to know what are you doing, and then team owners, in most cases, all they're going to say is, I want that app.
Yeah.
That's
don't
it.
Care what it does.
Don't care what it does. No.
You can read my messages and send it where you want. Absolutely. So yeah, I hadn't picked up on that sort of level. I was thinking that from an admin you could control it down and say which can, but it doesn't look like that from here, as you say, Gary. And that I would certainly be a little nervous and be investigating further if I was an admin somewhere.
But at the same time, this would actually make teams like cyber guys or information governance a little bit happier in the fact that when someone is granting consent to something, it is just that block. It's not everything else they've got access to. So it's a bit more granular, like was mentioned about the SharePoint, the classic SharePoint permissions. If I call it that, actually, I probably have never mentioned it like that. But so I'm actually quite looking forward to when this does come to the SharePoint side of things. I'm hoping that they will, Microsoft will expand into that as well, and get rid of ATS. Yeah.
Oh, so it's an Azure AD portal configuration.
Yeah, it's definitely on my list of digging further into. Now, actually, thinking something we didn't talk about before the show, on that note, I'm going to put Gary on the spot, and he's probably going to say no. Last week, we mentioned Clarity and a very interesting tool that you could plug into your website and get some analytics. And this afternoon, I went to clarity.microsoft.com and I logged in, and then someone called me and I didn't go back and look at it. Did anyone else get a chance to look at it at all?
I'll come back to you.
No would be the answer to that
Ooh,
one.
that was cruel.
I was just remembering, because I know I didn't manage to do it. Probably a shout out for fellow podcasters, the Up podcast. They have had a show on Clarity, which again I started listening to at the weekend, and then my kids kicked off, so I had to turn it off and haven't had a chance to listen to it. But I know they've talked about it. So if you want to listen to a podcast who follows through and actually does some analysis, definitely go and speak to the Up podcast. We just witter on and get some experts to talk in the second half, but hopefully we might follow up on that in a minute. I think one last bit of light-hearted news, as we have Paul and myself on for this one. A big shout out to Emily Mancini, who's pulled together. They want to get a community game night, trying to get people to do games, the kind of fun that you have at conferences and things that has disappeared in the virtual world. So they came up with the hashtag EMS365. What did you meme? And I think, Paul, you won a couple of weeks ago, wasn't it?
I did, yes, and I was a judge. So and then Mark Cashman won thereafter. Yeah, it's quite good because it really, especially for me, because I've got a sense of humour that this works well with. So finding an image of some crazy thing happening in the background and putting a meme on it. So that's really, really good fun. I must admit, I struggle to post just one because I'm like, I post one and go, I could do something better.
Is it meant to just be one each? I wasn't sure.
I don't know actually. I've not actually read the rules. I just
so for those who can't, I couldn't see in the rules that it said that. So I have to admit, last time I did post too, because I realised I posted the same as someone else. But for those who can't see on the screen, effectively the person who wins every week has to pick up a phrase that they've heard in a meeting that day and share it. So Mark Cushman had, please make sure you're on the Corp network. I think it was one of few. For those who can see a picture, I can see Paul put a picture of a carp. I have a slight fish phobia. That picture really is not good for me on there. And I decided to go with Louise Fries and the Four Seasons background for that one. So if you like a bit of light-hearted fun, either join in, submit your memes on there. The competition runs every week from Monday through to Friday, so plenty of chances and a good chance for a little bit of fun.
So there's a hashtag to follow, a hashtag M365 what did you meme, if you want to plug that into Twitter and have a look at the what people are posting. It's a good laugh, and feel free to add your humour and inspiration to it.
Absolutely.
Or contain your humour and
share it on there. Gary, have we given you enough time?
I've checked, it didn't work. But I was connecting it to Google Analytics, so I wasn't doing half the work. So it's in preview, so obviously that bit is a little bit flaky at the moment.
I wondered what would happen with that. So
either that or people are just not going to my blog, which could be possible.
No, that's not true, because I often copy and paste some of the links from there. So
that's a bonus. That's good.
Yeah, absolutely. There's at least one person that goes there, I think it's fair to say.
Excellent.
So events and stuff coming up. I'm quickly trying to bring the show notes. Paul, something to think about. Do you have any events coming up? But I'll announce some of them. Al, you've got the London Power Platform user group on the 3rd of December.
3rd of December, and it's lightning sessions. So it's a Christmas special. So there is a form to submit your session. So they should be 15 minutes long. So it's powerplatform.london/submit session.
In the show notes at greyhatbeard.com if you
so we're hoping to get some festive sessions. As I say, only 15 minutes, no pressure, but if you can submit something, that would be awesome.
It sounds, though, it's like, 15 minutes. It's so hard to do something in 15 minutes. It is hard because you just want to talk. Well, I do anyway. It's like trying to squash things in.
Yeah,
but
it's either too long or too short, isn't it?
Yeah. For anyone who heard my GlobalCon 4 lightning talks, too short. I think was pretty much the summary of that one.
Oh, I managed to do precisely 16 minutes rather than 15 minutes. So, so long as it's not not restricted. But yeah, if you submit a session, festive theme, can be silly, doesn't have to be serious. But yeah, we're hoping that we'll get some interesting and fun sessions for that evening.
Power BI Santa tracker, that'd be good.
So I've got I'm presenting something on the UK user group on the 13th of January. I say something because it's going to be PMP related, and I'm going to see where the state of things are towards the time, then come up with the presentation of what's been built so far. It'll probably be focused around the changes that's being made to PMP Sites Core, PMP PowerShell, because all of that stuff is evolving into PMP Core SDK, which is what I primarily contribute on at the moment, and the new PMP framework. So I'm just the naming is very close together, and PMP the next generation of PMP PowerShell.
So what you're going to tell us is it's going to be PMP Dataverse soon.
Yes,
just going to get rid of all that naming
once we've settled on it.
Split through the confusion.
PMP-verse.
Yeah. So there's a whole load of cool stuff happening with that to modernise actually the whole thing to bring it up to line with the latest .NET standards.
So sorry, which you say UK user group? Is that the Microsoft 365 UK user group, the one run by Chirag?
Yes. Yeah, that one. Yeah.
In which case, I will make sure I get that into the show notes.
That's just reminded me that I'm presenting the month before, so I'm doing December on the 16th. Azure Managed Identity.
Nice.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
It's nice. The meetup doesn't necessarily list who's talking at the different events. Oh no, yes, it does. There we go. Keyless authentication with Azure Managed Identity. Yeah, I love the events Chirag does. The only problem is it's just before Cubs for me, so it's never been a good time. So, but I do try and catch up with those.
I must admit, actually, they do coincide with other calls that happen at that time. Actually, now that the time zone shifted, I could probably start watching them now. But yeah, I couldn't attend most of them because the PMP calls happen at the same time.
That's slightly awkward, isn't it? Yes, I need to be on the PMP call and presenting about PMP. Yeah. Which one's more important this week?
Oh, that's reminding me as well. I'm presenting the PMP call on the 26th. GitHub code spaces and remote development containers. So I've been doing work on the CLI for Microsoft 365. God, naming it's so hard. I can't even know the name of the tool that I made then. But yeah, so basically, if you're interested in code spaces and what we're doing in the CLI to really improve the development onboarding experience to a single button click, then come along to that on the, I think it's
unless 26th. You're still on the darn wait list and you're still waiting for code spaces to be available.
So here's the good thing. What I'm going to show you can be used without code spaces.
Ooh.
So you can rate
there you go then, Kevin. No excuse now.
No. The code spaces bit is just the draw. It's a bit of clickbait, right?
no code spaces.
I think there's a few more events. I know we've talked about the Office 365 developer boot camps coming up, but the big one is Collab Days. I've got my Collab Days Barcelona top on today, but there's another Collab Days event in the Alps, so Munich to Vienna on Friday 24th. Friday the 4th of December. And Al, I think you're speaking on that one on security and compliance.
Yeah, I'm trying to explain the key concepts of security and compliance in really easy, non-technical terms. So lots of analogies. And I'm still working on all of those analogies. And it's a lot of fun. So yeah,
you're not just copy and pasting that lifecycle.
No, that's too technical for one. The level I'm pitching at is stories that you'll be able to remember.
Excellent. And excitingly, we also have Grey Hat Beard will be there. So we'll be running a panel panel-ish session on the etiquette of Microsoft 365. So we're going to be having Louise Fries is going to join us. Vesa Noppanen has agreed to join us, and just waiting on one more person. We're hoping to get to fill that. So I'll be sharing some tips and some ideas, and hopefully having a little bit of fun doing it. Which reminds me, I must make sure that presentation with the timer starts to work properly.
Well, that added to the fun last time.
It did. Have I missed any others? We've got Global Con 4, the main event. Clarissa, who we had on last time, is talking about how to transition from SharePoint to, I was going to say CDS, but how to transition from SharePoint to the Dataverse, I guess. And also, I'll be speaking on knowledge management, which is another one I need to get going on, finishing off that talk as well. And by finishing off, I mean starting it. I think there are some other events that I've missed that haven't got in the show notes, that haven't got in our notes here, but will be in the show notes. So we'll make sure we grab all those. So if you want to hear more of us at events, keep an eye on stuff there. Otherwise, I think we'll wrap up before Al's stomach starts rumbling too much and talk in part 2 on the joy of migration.